Hello, my dear friends. Hope you are having a nice sunny day today. Are you ready for some stories I've prepared for you today? The first one is about OP's brother-in-law, who cheated on OP's sister and now pretends to be a victim of the situation. Or maybe he really is. It's a tricky one. Even after the update, I'm not sure if I believe him. Well, listen to the story, guys, and let me know if you would believe and forgive him if you were OP's sister. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. A few months ago, I caught my sister's husband in bed with another girl, both naked. It was during a Christmas party at our mutual friend's house. My sister was spending the holiday with my parents. Due to our works, my brother-in-law and I would only join them on New Year's Eve. I confronted him about it, and he told me he had no idea what really happened that night, since he was so drunk. He also told me that the girl I had caught him in bed with had been obsessed with him since high school and will do anything to win his heart. But he has never had feelings for her, let alone slept with her. He loves my sister and their son so much. He believes, based on this obsession, she had slipped something in his drinks. At least that's what he told me. I couldn't tell if he was lying or telling the truth. I told him that whatever might have happened that night, he's still got to tell my sister because that's what a married couple should do. And I believe my sister will be able to tell if he's telling the truth or not. He promised that he would when the time is right. The following weeks, I found out he had not told my sister about it though, so I decided to do what I thought was the right thing to do. My sister flew off the handle when I told her and proceeded to file for a divorce. I encouraged her to sit down and talk about it with him. What if it was not his fault? What if the girl had indeed drugged him so she could force herself on him? But my sister told me that it was not the first time he had cheated on her. He had once been involved with an S-worker during the second year of their marriage. He called me afterwards and confronted me and blamed me for ruining his marriage. He also told me that he had indeed cheated on her years ago, but she forgave him. This time, though, it was not something he had wanted to happen, but she refused to believe him now. To make me feel even worse, I recently found out that the girl he was caught in bed with is indeed mentally unstable and obsessive and has had a history of D. But no matter what I say to my sister, she will not change her mind. Now I think I believe my brother-in-law that he did not cheat on my sister the second time with that girl. Am I the a-hole here? I don't think OP is in the wrong here. Brother-in-law wasn't D'd. He's telling OP that nonsense to make OP feel bad for telling on him. The fact that he's cheated before says it all. OP's sister let him get away with it last time, so he thought he could do it again. Good for OP's sister for not forgiving him again. And really, given that he's been caught twice, I'd bet that he's done it way more than those 2 times. Most importantly, OP did not ruin her sister's marriage. Her cheating ex-husband did. OP saved her from his BS. Noidia274 says, "Not the a-hole. You did the right thing telling your sister. If he thinks he was D'd and taken advantage of, he should report it to the police. That is R. If he really did cheat, then he ruined their marriage, not you. Either way, the responsibility is his, not yours." Another user says, "Not the a-hole, just a really complicated situation. But didn't you say that the husband promised to tell your sister? To me, him ignoring that request and the previous history of cheating paints him as the a-hole." HeyGirl333 says, "Not the a-hole. Sounds like your sister already forgave him once. If he was a good man, she would have listened like she did the first time. But he's a cheater, and cheaters don't get a lot of leeway. It's unfortunate, but at this point, he's the boy who cried wolf." Update. We went to the police to file a report for D'ing and S-assault today. The reason why brother-in-law did not tell my sister about it was because he was very much disconcerted as to how to handle the situation better. He knew he was innocent, but due to his past cheating on my sister, he was afraid that she wasn't going to believe him. He wanted to confront the girl first, but after that night, it was as if she had disappeared or something. Not to mention the humiliation, since men being victim of R is not something that everyone hears about very often, at least not in our city, and he was worried nobody's going to believe him and mock him instead. Some of brother-in-law's friends will testify against the girl in court because they're aware of her terrorizing him since college. I sat down with brother-in-law after we returned from the police today, and he told me what had really happened that night. He had no idea the girl was going to be at the party. She was invited to join by another mutual friend of ours. He was going to leave after he saw her, but she told him that she was going to move to Europe for a job and would like to set things right between them. He had not seen her for years, and he wanted to believe that she had changed. I was outside all night since we were not allowed to smoke inside, so I really did not see what was happening leading up to finding them in bed together. The friend who had invited her will also testify in court because she was there when the girl approached him. I talked to my sister on the phone, and she did not want to hear any more of her husband. She is deeply hurt and only cares for her son's well-being for now. I, female 32, have a son, Cole, male 8, with my ex-husband, Mike, male 38. If we're being honest, I hate Mike with every fiber of my being. During the divorce, Mike and his lawyer managed to paint me as an addict, dredging up my past struggles with addiction. I've been clean for the past 6 years. To argue that I'm not a good mother or trustworthy, which resulted in Mike receiving primary custody. He has full custody and I get Cole on weekends, which I see as an absolute travesty. Because Mike makes a lot more money than I do, he was able to afford these high-powered lawyers, and they basically forced me to take a plea deal, which lets me have Cole on weekends, as if they didn't argue for full custody and no visitation. Knowing I couldn't afford a lawyer nearly as good as them, I decided to take the deal, but it's been the worst decision of my life. Mike basically takes advantage of the custody arrangement to make sure Cole doesn't see or even contact me over the week, which makes this even more unbearable. Last weekend was Cole's birthday, and Mike threw him a party with all his friends and family. I knew that I could just give Cole his gift on Saturday, but I decided that I have a right to see my son on his birthday. Thus, I went over to Mike's house and snuck in through a back door, and when I saw Cole, I gave him a big hug and wished him happy birthday. I was then about to leave when Mike noticed me and pulled me aside, where he started yelling at me for violating our agreement. We argued for a bit about how he was alienating my son from me and how I have a right to see him on his birthday. But he wouldn't budge and kept bringing up the agreement. He then snidely chuckled that he'll see me in court before walking back to the party. I think OP should start making better decisions in her life. Mike does not have to allow OP to see the child on weekdays, and OP knowingly went against their agreement and snuck into his home instead of waiting a couple more days. I don't think OP would be happy if her ex would come to her house during her time with her son. So yeah, I think OP should apologize to her ex. Do you think so, guys? And of course, let's see what the community thinks about the situation. Baby Cakes Murphy says, "You stated in the post that you agreed to that custody agreement of getting Cole on the weekends. Last I checked, Wednesday is not a weekend. You violated your court-agreed deal and trespassed into Mike's home. And what about when Cole's birthday is a weekend? Bet you wouldn't be thrilled if Mike showed up unannounced and uninvited because it was his birthday. Slam dunk, you're the a-hole. Sounds like the court system got it right. And it sounds like you're fast-tracking to have zero custody." I Can't Drive 5 says, "You're the a-hole. They didn't paint you as an addict. You are an addict first. You admitted it yourself. Congrats on 6 years being sober, but that doesn't change the past. Why couldn't you throw Cole a party on the weekend when you have custody? No child is going to turn down 2 parties. And you had to sneak into the house, which, besides being illegal, is also creepy and crazy behavior. Normally, an OP sways and omits details that make themselves look better, which I have a feeling a lot is being left out. And even if you didn't, you are clearly the a-hole." My brother and I bought a house together in Albany, New York at the end of 2015. And we, some other siblings and friends, all moved in and contributed rent. The mortgage was in my brother's name, but both of our names were on the deed, and I made the entirety of the $7,000 down payment. At the time we bought the house and throughout our ownership of it, it was agreed that everything was 50-50, and that typically manifested by way of him doing the administrative work and me putting up the money. In May of 2019, my brother moved out of state, and while his name was still on the deed and mortgage, I assumed all the administrative and financial responsibilities for the house for about the next 3 years, which included paying out of pocket for any expenses or repairs. Example, new washer, new hot water heater, etc. In the interim, my brother moved back to New York, but moved in with his girlfriend, so the house remained effectively my responsibility alone. In June of 2022, before I moved out of state, I legally signed the house over to him in a good faith agreement that 1. He wouldn't sell the house for at least a couple years, since there were other people still living there, and 2. He would buy me out of my half once he was in a more financial stable position. I told him that was fine. I wasn't looking for a payday, but I would like to get some money back eventually, whenever it was feasible, and he proposed raising rent and using that extra income to pay me back over time. Once I moved out of the house at the end of June, he called a meeting with the remaining residents and told them that, while rent would be increasing, he had no plans to sell the house for a couple years. He had them sign new leases for the house, but didn't give anyone a copy, and to this day hasn't produced a copy of the lease despite being asked. In November of 2022, he decided he wanted to sell the house, We had a house meeting just after Thanksgiving, since I was back in town, and my brother made everyone aware of his desire to, at the very least, get out from under the mortgage and responsibility for the maintenance of the house. We workshopped a few possibilities, but nothing really feasibly came from it. And then in December, he told me that, as a result of family trouble on his wife's side, he was tabling the idea of selling the house for the time being. In February of 2023, my brother once again decided he was selling the house and made it clear that it was no longer up for discussion and that everyone needed to be out by May. No one could stop him, since my name was no longer on the deed. But this went against the agreement we had in place that he wouldn't sell the house. Then, following the closing of the sale, where the net profit was somewhere in the ballpark of $100,000, I asked him if it would be a good time to discuss buying me out of it, since he had just come into a considerable amount of money. He has continually refused any discussion of the sort. He has been very careful to not outright say the words, "No, I won't pay you," but he couches it in phrases like, "I'm keeping my personal business to myself." It may be worth noting that while there was no formal written agreement at the time the house was signed over, we did have a verbal agreement. I have audio of our conversation recorded, during which he explicitly states that he knows he needs to buy me out of my half of the house, and he offered to reimburse me over time. So he definitely knew that was expected. Additionally, the same agreement about the timeline for the sale was made with the 4 other residents of the house that retained after I moved. He also agreed in Facebook messages to pay me for my portion of the house, and now will not. I guess my questions are, do I have a case, or am I screwed because I didn't have a formal written agreement in place? And do any of the other residents of the house have a case concerning their eviction? I would highly advise going to a lawyer and having him draft a legal letter for him to know that OP means business. OP's brother might take OP a bit more serious if he actually believes OP will take him to court. Might also be worth approaching his wife and letting her know sympathetically that OP really doesn't want to cause problems for their family, but OP will be suing if it won't be possible to agree with OP's brother. Generic user 69143 says, "You will face an extremely hard uphill battle to get anything from this situation. Hindsight is 20/20, but why would you sign yourself off the deed in any case? What was the upside of doing so, other than allowing him to cut you out down the road? Now it is your word about this verbal agreement against his, and he has a written quitclaim in his corner regarding ownership." Sure Introduction 5547 says, "Sounds like you ducked yourself over by signing out. Also sounds like your brother is an a-hole." McFlame13 says, "I believe you have a decent case against him. You have a recording of the verbal agreement and text messages of him where he knows that he has to pay you for your half. I do suggest getting a lawyer soon and getting the process started so that he will actually have the money to pay you back. Only other thing that has me curious is the new leases. Isn't the landlord, your brother, supposed to give tenants any updated or signed leases? He may have broken the law there." My fiance, Ella, 31 female, and I, 32 male, are thinking of getting married soon. I proposed 10 years ago once we both graduated after we met in our first year of university. We're only getting married now because I feel like we're in a good place financially. We were making a guest list, and it comes to about 50 people. We have large families, so the majority of guests are that, and the rest make our close friends. We're both in agreement on the type of venue, the idea of having a photographer and videographer, so we have wedding photos and a short film, the type of menu and theme. The issues I have is that Ella wants us to be married abroad, and for the wedding to happen next year, and to create a miniature holiday. She wants it to be a 5-day-long event, going home on the Sunday. I put my foot down and told her that it would be hard for everyone to fly out for so long, and it would be expensive for the guests who would have to book time off to attend. We can afford it, but it would also be expensive for us. My idea was to have a courthouse wedding before, and we can shorten the wedding into a weekend trip and have the photographer and videographer film that. We could do an informal ceremony where we say "I do," have a fancy dinner with the cake cutting, and then celebrate for the rest of the time. Ella doesn't think it's a proper wedding, and she's waited 10 years to marry me. That we spent all of that time saving up and delaying the wedding for other things in life, and she's been dreaming of being able to do this. She also said that her parents are more than willing to help pay for flights and the venue for everyone. They're incredibly well off as doctors, so we would just need to pay for the rest of the wedding and festivities. She thinks that if people cannot make it, it isn't the end of the world, and we can celebrate with them after our 5-day event abroad. Also, that my idea is just essentially a holiday for everyone without the wedding part, and she wants to be walked down the aisle and have a classic ceremony. I still don't agree, and even if her parents want to front the flights and venue, It's embarrassing to use their money given we've been saving all this time. Am I the a-hole? I think OP should be happy his fiance still wants to get married after this. I wouldn't. After waiting 10 years, he is still making things complicated. OP needs to either have the wedding his fiance wants or break up so she can move on with her life. Dale Cooper's wife says, "You're the a-hole. You made your girlfriend wait 10 years to be good financially in order to get married, only to do a courthouse wedding? You could have done that years ago, dude. Find a compromise that works. There are options that are in between an expensive destination multi-day extravaganza and a courthouse." Gus Bus 200 says, "You're the a-hole. You made her wait 10 years, and you think it's unreasonable that she wants to go all out? If I waited 10 years, only for my man to suggest a courthouse, I'd be out of there. Truthfully, probably would have left a lot sooner. This is her dream, and you don't even have one. Her parents said they would pay. What's the issue? Your pride? Get the duck out of here." And putting your foot down needs to exit your vocabulary immediately. Very icky phrasing about your partner.